Welcome to Real Money Talks. Real strategies from the moneymakers and the world changers that you can use to make millions, keep those millions, multiply your wealth, and build your team. Here's your host, author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, money expert on Dr. Phil, CNN, CNBC, The Street TV, Fox News, and The View, Laurel Langmeyer.
Hey, this is Laurel, and welcome back to Laurel's Real Money Talks, the podcast where we talk about money and how do you be a millionaire, which is a huge frame of how do you make money, how do you keep money, how do you invest it, how do you use a team, and everything in between that it takes. So today I have Eli Marcus with me. He's interviewed and worked with the best in class, many of my buddies too. In fact, Denis Waitley, who gave me Think and Grow Rich, was one of my 17-year-old mentors from Les Brown. I can't believe Donald Neale Walsch, love him. But this one I love. I want to know a little bit about Michael Jackson. That had to be fun. The rest of your whole list of folks I pretty much know too, right? From the likes of Victor Hansen and the great people. So Eli hangs out with the greats. He's a motivational speaker and also has his own podcast that I will be airing on shortly. So Eli, welcome to Laurel's Real Money Talks.
Well, thank you, Laurel. I am ready to rock here. Let's get the audience nice and pumped up and crazed.
Yeah.
And, let's roll.
So talk a little bit about just your background and what you share with audiences. As I'm making millionaires or even 100,000aires, a lot of times, and we'll get into the process because I get down in the nitty gritty and they'll be like, I'm losing my motivation. So talk about some of your background and things that you share with other entrepreneurs to keep them up and motivated.
Well, just to share my background, I was actually probably would have been voted the shyest kid in the entire school. I was the kind of kid that sat in the back of the class. And if the teacher even looked my way, it's like, this is going to be the worst day of my life. So that was me growing up. I didn't like it. I liked the guys that were in front of the class that seemed to, be the teacher's pet, raising their hand all the time. And they seem to have gotten all the pretty girls. So, it was not a great way to grow up. And I felt there was always a better way. So I kind of lived in the bookstores and picked up every self-help classic I possibly could from, of course, as you alluded to, Think and Grow Rich, of course, by Napoleon Hill. Back in the good old days, 1935, he wrote that book, to, of course, everything from The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, you name it, every single classic. And I just learned that actually, we don't have to stay in the same pattern. We don't have to be that shy kid. There's actually sometimes, and I don't mean we're schizophrenic, but there's more than one personality within us. We can be an introvert and an extrovert at the same time. In fact, Michael Jackson off stage was about as introverted as you can get. Hard to believe when you saw him on stage.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I feel like as I've grown into my success and being always out front with other people, I wouldn't call it introvert, but I require my space, right? That recovery space, that silence. That's why I like to, sometimes I'll go up and just ski the mountains alone here in Lake Tahoe because I need space, right, to just clear it all. So I agree. I think there's personalities you can drive, and bring forth and bring back. So to that point, how do you help people do that? How do you help people stay motivated and up? Because I think that's an internal thing. I don't know how many people come to you, Eli, but they come to me and say, Laura, motivate me. And it's like, I can get you all excited. We can play music. We can go out and work out. We can do all sorts of things to change your state, but that's not an internal thing.
Well, it's a great question. To me, first of all, energy, you talk about change your state. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to constantly be changing your state. If you're in a low energy, if you're depressed, if you're down, if you just don't think, it's your day, change your state. You've got to get the energy up. So I try to get my energy up. And when I get my energy up, people around me, their energies get up. That's the way the world works. When you're in a low-key person, you tend to be low-key. When you're in a high-energy situation, you're high energy. That's what I mean. We don't have just one personality. We adapt often to the circumstances and the people around us. So my advice is always, daily try to get yourself pumped up. whichever way, floats your boat, whether it's listening to Joel Osteen, Tony Robbins, Laura Langmeyer, Eli Marcus, whatever, Les Brown, whatever floats your boat. But, motivation is not a one-time thing. It's not a once a week thing. It's something you need to do every day, because our personalities, we're all over the place, and most unfortunately, our minds tend to gravitate more to the negative thoughts than they do to the positive thoughts. So we've got to constantly find ourselves in a better peak state. And since we can't do that by ourselves, and we don't want to be popping pills, we better listen to those YouTube videos or listen to these great podcasts and constantly get motivated and pumped.
So give us some techniques, because you brought up something that's great. And I think it's fascinating still to this day, all through all the decades, centuries, how someone could have, like I can have 9 great reviews online, but somebody's going to pay attention to the one negative whiner that just didn't, where they weren't going to do anything with anybody, including me anyway. Or, what I mean? Like, what are some techniques you help people get out of that negative and critical thinking to staying there? Like it's so much easier to say it, like us saying it. What are some techniques you'd advise some of our listeners we have all over the world?
Well, I'm not trying to get religious on you or hokey on you, but at the end of the day, if we believe in a higher power than ourselves, and we realize, that we're miracles and we're great, and, we're just as good as anybody else, we just have to apply ourselves. We really start believing that, we're not going to pay attention to every little, criticism. And, unfortunately, we remember things that people said to us when we were 7 years old. Denis Waitley, I love the way he says it. They called him every name in the book, and he talks about it in his seminars. But you got to get to the point where you start to outgrow that and realize that you're not the labels that people placed on you. Les Brown was told he was educably retarded. Can you imagine if he bought into that, where he'd be right now? So you can't buy into the labels. You have to believe, that you are a miracle and you are made of greatness and you can do anything that you put your mind to. The only thing stopping any of us, nothing to do with any of the externals. We've seen people with no arms and no legs. There's a guy out there, I think his name is Nick. He's got a long Greek name, and he's out there pumping and motivating people up. So, if he can do it, why can't you do it? That's what we have to say to yourself, not why can't we do it, but why can't we get out there and make a difference and be the one ourselves? Because we often believe it's the celebrity and the other person that we're listening to. We can't see it for ourselves, but why not? The only difference between them and us is they took more chances.
Yeah, I say, in my language, I always say they just said yes more. The other thing that I'm gonna frame it. This is how I teach a lot of my students, and I'll share the technique. Is I say it's like muscle conditioning. If you want to get in shape, you don't go to the gym one time and just do 1 rep. I mean, you're in an 8 to 12 week sequence. It's at least 3 times a day, and then the repetition is usually 3 to 5 reps, depending on what kind of strength training program. So I say to people, you all have it in you. You have the muscles in you. We'll call them motivational muscle. I call them money muscles. They're just atrophied little guys. And unless you commit to really working this, like what I hear you say is, every day, like, what's your routine? What's your workout routine for being motivated? And then what I do is I really tactically help our students with a money routine. Like, I call it my revenue producing day. What are you going to get up thinking about? What are you going to do? How many calls you're going to make? How many social posts you're going to do? How many follow-up calls? So we actually help them structure how to get in a conditioning program for money, because they're just so employee oriented. So again, it's nothing that anything's wrong. It's just we were conditioned in my situation, my expertise. They're just conditioned with the wrong muscles. So they got to atrophy that employee thinking and grow their entrepreneurial thinking. So in that context, Eli, share what a day would look like, or how someone could do it. So say someone's super down and out, what could they do? And I'll let you go down to every hour. I know some teachers who teach this same kind of like similar work and motivation, where literally every 5 minutes they have to do something to shift their state back up because they're so atrophied or defeated or whatever, sabotaged or whatever word you want to put on it. What kind of conditioning program for motivation would you give somebody?
Well, it's a great question. I like to wake up every morning and I have what I call my non-negotiables, things that I must do every morning to set the stage right for my day. What's the first non-negotiable? Now, if we have at least 8 hours generally if we sleep 8 hours, where we haven't drank any water. The body needs water. In fact, they show that, heart attacks happen on Monday mornings because, people wake up in the morning and they, haven't had water, literally, or they might not go for another 5 hours with water. So you got to do the essentials, have your water. Another thing to do is maybe have some gratitude and realize that there are great things happening, because the more that you convince yourself that good things are happening to you, the more good things tend to happen to you. It's just the law of attraction. So have gratitude in the morning, meditate. It's important to have that silence and that stillness so that you can block out all this, craziness and just be still, and you'd be surprised what comes into your head. For me, another non-negotiable is exercise. I like to go out and run. Somebody else might like to swim, bike. And as you know, Laurel, as you alluded to before, it's incredible the kind of ideas that flow into your head when you're moving. For me, that's the time when I'm most creative. I think of things, I think of book titles, I think of conquering the world. They all come to my head because the endorphins are flowing. You're in a good state. It's hard to think negative when you're exercising and moving. So that's another good reason why every single day that should be part of your non-negotiable. Set the stage right. And again, lastly, we talked about, find it is who that you resonate with, whether it's a preacher like a Joel Osteen, or somebody who's out there talking about the Bible, or whether it's Les Brown, who's just, pumping you up like crazy, or it's Tony Robbins, who's got all the great principles, or Laura Langmeyer, who can teach you how to be a millionaire and give you the steps to do that. I mean, that's incredible. I'm reading your book right now, and I'm like, I can't wait till I get through the end. Because we all needed that probably when we were in grade school. So the point is, we can't undo the past. We can only look at the present right now, make the change. And one thing we have to guard against is the status quo. We're addicted to our status quo, and we have to get comfortable with change. And the more change we get comfortable with, the better our lives will become.
Okay, we're going to go down that. We're going down that path. So status quo, right? Call it sheepology, or, all the words that everybody's ever used. What are some techniques you'd use to get above it? And I'm going to lead you, because I just came out of a really high energy mastermind over the weekend. And, I do this with my clients too. And I think I'm going to speak to other people, and I want you to come up with some techniques as well. But, you are the sum of the people that you allow influencing you, like the 5 or however many around you. And I know for like women, I'm constantly telling women to trade up, to change up, and they just won't. And so they've allowed, whether it's their high school friends, their neighbor friends, to keep them in this little status quo rut pattern. So I would just say my technique number one is really take this seriously. I mean, how many decades have most of us heard, you're the sum of the people around you, and how many people have not made that move? And really, and it's nothing to be mean to them. It's just you allow less time and energy, contamination, I'd call it. Like I tell all my clients, if you want to be rich and some of the people you hang out with don't talk about money to them. That's just not a conversation that's going to be tolerated. Talk about anything else, but you don't talk about money, because you're just back in that negative state. So that's a lot. Those are a couple of things I do. What do you do to have people get out of that? Because like you said, status quo, even the word you use, comfortable, it's convenient, it's safe. So what techniques can people use to get moving from that?
Well, I'm really glad you asked me that, Laurel, because I'm going to use you as an example. I reached out to you maybe almost a year ago because I just got wind of you. And I said, you're somebody that I need to learn from and hang out with or collaborate with in some way or another. So my belief, I use this C word called collaborate all the time. You're as powerful as your collaborations, where, hard to do things in this life all by ourselves, hard to get to 10 levels above. You can do a lot of things on your own. Right. I happen to be that person who probably does more on my own than I care to admit. But the choices are really better when you can collaborate with those who can do things that you would spend your entire life trying to figure out on your own. And yet they can teach you something maybe in an hour. I'm sure you can teach me in 1 hour things I haven't learned my entire life. Why would I not want to surround myself around it? So our mutual friend, Victor Hansen, and his lovely bride, put out a great book last year called Ask. and that's kind of the key to the kingdom. We're not asking enough questions, or we're not asking enough quality questions. I'm amazed by the people I'm surrounded by who just don't ask me the right questions. And if they just ask me the right questions, it's amazing how their life can shift. Instead, they're complaining to me instead of asking me, what can I do to solve it?
Yeah. It was interesting because I went to Jordan Adler's, one of the biggest networkers in the world. He's a dear friend of mine, and he was with me at this mastermind. They were doing this networking. It was so interesting. Just to speak to that comment is, I said, they'd sit down and we'd told me everything about money that wasn't working. They didn't say what they want, but it was very easy for them to free flow what they didn't want. And then Jordan and I sat by each other intentionally, because he would ask almost the same question. I'm Jordan, world's leading networker. What are you looking for? Was his question. They literally were like deer in the headlights. Like, what do you mean? What am I looking for? Like looking, and they didn't even get the question. I'm like, oh my gosh! There's just no forward thinking about, asking questions. What do you want? What's your why? Like you even said, gratitude. I mean, what can you be thankful for versus criticize and go to the negative side? It's just so easy for people to live in that space. So what would you say to those folks? Because there's a lot of them.
Well, first of all, everybody's looking for this so-called thing called The Secret. The book, even a book comes out called The Secret. And that's certainly one way to get yourself to be more successful. But I don't think there's one answer. A friend of mine just texted me this morning, and he wanted to know, give me the one answer there is to be successful. And I just don't think there's just one answer. But if I had to answer things, burn the boats behind you. Just go all in on plan A. There shouldn't even be a plan B, because if there's plan B, then you're hedging your bet. So you just got to go after your passion. And I would say that's the other secret is, have passion for something and go all in on that passion. Don't go in where you think it's safe and where you're going to make the most money. The money will flow to you if you have the most passion, in my opinion. But I'd rather be making less money and be in my passion than to make a whole lot of money and have no passion whatsoever. But most of the people who go after their passion, somehow the money finds their way anyway. So go after your passion, get out there and burn the boats behind you, have blinders on. And remember, you can choose to spend 3 hours on social media scrolling through stuff that are never going to change your life, or you can choose to apply yourself and learn systems. And you have a system. And that's something that people need to learn. You need to put systems into your life to make your life simpler, because there's only so many hours in the day. And I assure you, everybody feels that there's not enough, time at the end of the day. So with a system, you'll have more time at the end of the day.
Yeah. So if you've heard through the podcast, I'll do a little bit of summarizing, is what's your routine, your daily routine, whether it's money and money and motivation. Right. So between your daily routine, your systems of how you're going to get there. And I have to add mentors. I think there's a lot of you who haven't really, you spend a lot of money on, I would say, fitness and weight loss, right? It tends to easily be spent. But when do you spend money on your education? And, Eli, the reason I did my YouTube channel, which is, call it 10, 12 minutes a day, but there's a money topic and a money lesson every day, 5 days a week. We committed to that a year ago, July. Just as a way to do just that. Like I would say, start your day as a non-negotiable, hearing a 10 to 12 minute money lesson from me. Like, what are we talking about? And then for the parents, start talking about that at home. And I'd say for the parents too, and I want to, flip that more to your motivational conversation. What do you say to the parents who I think are responsible for raising this next generation? And I think there's just an interesting job being done. I'll just say that. And they're not bringing some of these, just what I call success principles. I feel like a lot of our generation, right? And a lot of the guys, like Bob Proctor was my mentor forever, Bernie Dorman, Wayne Dyer. I mean, Zig Ziglar, a lot of the greats have passed, and they were the ones that started the success movement. They're the ones that coached Tony Robbins, coached me, coached a lot of extremely successful people. I mean, Victor Hansen was a coach of mine. Sounds like he was, coach yours. There's just this whole like mentoring and coaching that I think is just mandatory. To me, that's a non-negotiable. To live your life not being coached in the things that you want to be more successful at is mind-boggling to me. Like, why are you out there struggling, knocking your head on the wall, when there are so many people who are waiting to serve and help you. But you just won't look up and get out of your comfort zone. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I think you hit the nail on the head about the mentors. If you think about every successful person that we revere, whether it's an athlete or a film star, TV star, they've all got one thing in common. They've all got not only one coach, but they got a coach for different things. Some people got a strengthening coach. Some people got a coach on stretching. For if you're an athlete, some people have mind coaches. Denis Waitley, our mutual friend there, he was a coach for the Olympians and Apollo astronauts. So all the greats have coaches. They have the mentors. And so we need to make that investment. Our parents, unless we're extremely lucky, and our parent was, like the Mannings of football, the father was a great football player and the kids are great football players, but most of us don't have that. Our parents are doing something else. Certainly my parents were, so they didn't have the knowledge or the understanding on how to mentor me to become, my greatest sense of myself. So you need to find the outside mentors and not be afraid to spend a few shekels. You have to, invest in yourself. Because if you pour the coins of your purse into your mind will pour the coins back into your purse 10,000 times.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Eli, tell us a little bit about you. How do they get a hold of you, stay motivated with you on a regular basis?
Well, I think the best thing they can do is listen to my show, The Motivation Show, where I, interview some of the greats, who are still around. Denis Waitley, Victor Hansen have all been on my show. And so that's one way. Of course, you can listen on any listening platform. You can go to my website, elimarcussuccess.com, and follow me. My life, when I started in business, I'm the king of the cold calls. I made over 30,000 cold calls. And I can tell you one thing. I found every way not to do something. I did it all through trial and error. I do not recommend making 30,000 cold calls. That was before you had all the tools that you have today. But find the mentors and find the right tools, and don't work the hard way. You have to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah. All right. So follow Eli, those of you that are out there. And again, make sure you are on my YouTube channel. It's Laurel Langmeyer, the Millionaire Maker. You can find me on YouTube, and hit the subscribe notification button. Those are 10 to 12-minute lessons about money every day. The podcast, very similar to yours, Eli, is very interview style, other successful people bringing techniques that is going to help you in your journey to either making money, keeping money, investing money, bringing a team on board, bringing coaches, mentors, and getting your daily discipline accurate. Now, if you have any questions at any time for me or have a request, you go to asklaurel.com. So it's an Ask Me Anything page. You can do that for free 24/7. I have a team here that answers those questions to make sure you are given what you need. So make sure you're out on asklaurel.com. Follow Eli, follow me, and share your routine. Wouldn't that be fun? I'd love for you to come back on Ask Laurel and say, all right, I made up my routine. Here's how I'm going to get motivated with Eli. Here's how I'm going to make money with you, Laurel. And here's how we're going to continue to, learn together. So stay engaged and stop being comfortable. Till next time, have a great day. This is Laurel and Real Money Talks. So this is Laurel, and you've been listening to my podcast. If you've enjoyed this, I have a couple of things you can do that are completely up to you. Number one, take my quiz. Go to integratedwealthsystems.com and take the quiz. You will find that there's one of 4 personalities, financial personalities we call them, that you're going to fall into. So as you take the quiz, it'll actually go through and identify, are you, in stagnant cash flow, right? Are you overpaying taxes? Do you have debt issues? Are you a lifestyle junkie? Where are you? And then from there, it goes to a video that actually gives you some solutions on how to correct that problem. So again, go to integratedwealthsystems.com, take my quiz, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for listening to the Real Money Talks podcast. Your host has been Laurel Langmeyer, author of 5 New York Times bestsellers, money expert on Dr. Phil, CNN, CNBC, The Street TV, Fox News, and The View. Want to learn more about off-Wall Street investing, tax strategies, and multi-million-dollar business strategies? Visit liveoutloud.com/podcast for past episodes, show notes, and resources. For some special wealth-building gifts only for Laurel's podcast listeners, visit liveoutloud.com/podcast gifts. Do you have a burning question for Laurel? Visit AskLaurel.com to submit your question, and it may just be covered on a podcast episode. So stay tuned and be sure to subscribe to get new episodes every week.